Good early morning, gearheads. Welcome to
That all depends where you are.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
This is a no whining
exactly.
zone.
No
you go.
whining zone. There you go, Bob. Well, welcome to our coverage of the Formula One Azerbaijan Grand Prix. This is John Massengale sitting in the studio in Austin with Jonathan Green and Les Kaiser.
Morning.
Morning.
And we have Bob Varsha over Zoom from Atlanta. Hey, Bob, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, you guys, all things considered. At least I've got an hour on you in terms of sleep last night.
Oh, that hour
I'm
could be
ready to
so
go.
important.
This is a cool race. This is going to be neat.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. It is funny to see you, though, in the dark. Usually the sun is up when we're still in the dark in Austin. But yeah, I'm excited, man. This is, Baku has turned into a kind of an exciting race, especially considering a few years ago when it first came on the calendar, we weren't sure what to expect and really kind of had low expectations.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody looked at that long straightaway and thought, okay, that's cool. And then they looked at turn 9, where the course winds between the buildings of the old city, and everybody thought, how is that going to work? But actually, it's turned into a really cool racetrack. Passing is a lot easier than it looks. A lot of typical street circuit 90-degree corners. But I mean, this place is bad fast, average speed over 130 miles an hour, if history tells us anything. And not particularly tough on tires unless you push things too far. And we see that before in the past. So yeah, this is going to be neat. And you'll get some great television shots, I'm sure, of a really amazing city.
And Jonathan, this is one of the circuits you have not been to.
It is not one of the circuits I've been to, but you know what it reminds me of? You've asked me this before, but it does remind me of Macau. Macau is very similar to this in that you have one long, with a kink, same sort of thing, straight over a kilometer, so you don't want any downforce down that. And then you've got to complete what we call the mountain section or the hill section in Macau. Same thing as kind of here, but not quite. It's a lot more narrow in Macau. But the point is you need a lot of downforce in that section. So this is a real compromise. And so you've seen guys, especially Haas actually, most noticeably, setting their wings and trying to find holes, putting a slant in their wings to try to make it not quite as, go as fast as you can down the straights without losing grip in the wiggly bits. That's as simple as it is.
Yeah, and this is brought up something that you talk about, this long straight, but the fact that it's essentially street circuit too. But this has kind of made the porpoising rear its ugly head again a little bit too, because man, we saw that again, Bob, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely. Mercedes is struggling with it once again. Ferrari, we've seen some of it. Just watch those onboard cameras and watch the driver's helmets start to bounce. It's really difficult. And one of the things about that bouncing or porpoising that people don't talk about much is the fact that it makes braking, especially from high speeds where the porpoising happens, so much more difficult. It's like trying to catch a wave. You want to brake just when you've got maximum downforce, which, as Jonathan has pointed out, is not all that great here in Baku. But if you get it wrong, it's so easy to lock up. And we've seen that before. May have contributed to Lewis Hamilton's famous runoff at turn 1 on the restart with a couple of laps to go just a year ago.
Well, we're going to talk some more about that porpoising because it's been a topic of conversation, and we got some interesting thoughts on that too later in the show. But let me just talk about the circuit itself. It's pretty long. It's the third longest behind Spa and Jeddah. It's 6 kilometers, 6.003, and 3.73 miles. It's 20 turns, 9 right, 11 left, with 2 DRS zones, and we're scheduled for 51 laps. So I guess the all-time record was Bottas in 2019 in the Mercedes at 140, and race lap was Leclerc in 2019 at 143. So, and we can get some good top speeds too, Bob, right?
Yeah, those are times you just quoted, not speeds, but your point is taken. 133 miles per hour for the all-time quickest lap and 130 for the quickest ever race lap. But, this is also, I believe, where Valtteri Bottas was caught doing, 234 miles an hour. This place is really bad fast on that long straightaway.
It's the longest straight in Formula One at 2.2 kilometers.
That is just barely over Miami, isn't it? Miami was like right at 2 kilometers, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's long. And in fact, it's turn 16. You could call it the last corner because it basically is where you get all the drive. And you've got to get that right. And there's a tricky turn 15 before that. So those last two corners before you get on that main straight are critical. And I was interested to know, I was listening to Checkered Flag on the way in, that Red Bull didn't seem too disappointed by not having the pole. Leclerc's pole was sublime. It was brilliant. I don't know where he pulled that out from, but it was quite impressive. But it didn't seem to phase Red Bull in terms of what I heard on the radio. And that is because you only need a first lap or wait till lap 3 and DRS comes in and those Red Bulls are going to fly by any Ferrari that might just be in their way when they come out of 16.
And the Red Bulls are quicker in a straight line than the Ferraris. Let me correct something I said about Lewis Hamilton's braking last year. Of course, that was a different car. It's too early. I'm sorry. I'm talking.
We get it.
But the point is the Red Bulls are quicker in a straight line, and that contributes to the effect Jonathan's talking about. You get ahead, and suddenly, DRS or no DRS, it's a lot easier to stay ahead when you're 5-6 mile an hour quicker on the straightaway. And the quickest cars of all are the Alpines, and look where they're qualified, right in the middle of the pack, and they're the fastest cars in a straight line on this circuit.
Well, we also are hoping to have Chris Medland at Baku on here shortly. We're hoping he's got a good enough connection to get us all fixed up today because he's been on the grid for us and in the paddock at every race, getting us some interviews, and we're hoping to have Chris here shortly. So we'll keep an eye on Zoom to see if he connects up. But you know what, guys? This is exciting for lots of different reasons. I mean, look, we've got a lot of things going on. We've got a tight championship race in the constructors. We got a tight championship race in the drivers' championship, and with Checo on the rise, it's gotten really interesting over at Red Bull, hasn't it?
Yeah, it just made me think about what we've been doing this almost a decade now, right? Over a decade. Yeah. And I, in terms of prospects for what's ahead in the races that we've got, I don't think we've ever seen a season like this. By now, it's Mercedes 1-2, Hamilton, Bottas, and when are Ferrari going to show up, and when is Red Bull and is Verstappen going to challenge? You know what I mean? That's where we have been for the last 4 or 5 years. Not now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a completely different season. One that's Ferrari dominated at the beginning of the season. They've dropped the ball a couple of times. We've had some stop-start races, and now I think gloves are off. Baku's here, perfect conditions. There's no reason why this couldn't be potentially the most pivotal and most important race to somebody like Perez, possibly somebody like Alonso, and more importantly, somebody like Hamilton, placed 7th and has had an absolutely horrible season so far. Are we finally going to see him, porpoise or no porpoise, flipper his way down to a 4th or a 3rd?
I don't think so. Hamilton, well, the entire Mercedes team, except for Russell, is pointing out all of the problems they're having. Russell's just getting the job done, and so
therefore, what's wrong?
I don't know. You're circling around my thoughts there.
All right, my God, I don't ever want to do that again, Les. Early or not early, never let me circle completely.
It's getting crowded
thoughts
in here.
Great point, Les. Go ahead and make it. No, it's definitely interesting. I think, and Perez, I think, is the classic example of this. Number 2 coming to the fore, whether it's him or Esteban Ocon or George Russell or whoever it is might happen to be. The Perez, I mean, look at the role he's coming in on. He's the defending winner of this race. He won Monaco 2 weeks ago. He's got a brand new contract. Monaco and here, 2 extremely polar opposite racetracks, and he's outrun Verstappen.
Yep.
So, what do you do? I mean, this calls on the management skills of Christian Horner and the folks at Red Bull, I think, to keep the peace. And for his part, Verstappen's been, he hasn't been roiling the waters at all. He's been quiet while he tries to figure out what's going on with his car. But I think it's really interesting that Perez, who would have been a real factor in the silly season had he stayed unsigned by Red Bull, is there now, and he's got his arms around this car, and he's going to be very hard to beat.
Yeah, I think it's significant that he's out-qualified Verstappen for this race, because I said after Monaco, let's see what happens now, because at Spain, there was a bit of team orders going on. Monaco obviously went his way, kind of by proxy and by the way that the whole thing panned out. But now, with that win under his belt, he won this race last year. I'm with you. Bob. Sergio is in a really good position, 15 points behind Verstappen. If he can outpoint Verstappen today, the whole championship changes.
Absolutely. This could get very interesting with Perez. Hey, by the way, guys, it looks like we got Chris Medland on the line. Let's see if we can touch base with Chris and see what's going on in Baku. Hey, Chris, how are you this afternoon over there?
Good morning, guys. I'm very well. How are you guys doing?
We are up early, but we are excited.
We're going to let you take this show.
Yeah, I was going to say, when is it not early for you guys? It is set up beautifully, isn't it? I just heard what you're saying about Checo and Max there, and obviously with Charles on pole as well to kind of, I guess, worry Max in the sense, the Ferrari's still quick. It's not just about an inter-team battle. It's not like Mercedes when they were dominating and it was, two Mercedes cars, who's going to come out on top. Red Bull do have to think about the threat from Ferrari too. So, I feel like we're set up for a cracker, and we've had some belting F2 races so far that normally kind of the F1 drivers watch and go, okay, we need to avoid doing what they're doing and then we'll pick up some points. But I think it was 2016, they all did that. They all took it easy and we had a boring race here, and they've learned, no, you've got to attack if you want to score big. So I think we're in for a good one.
Well, Chris, give us a little snapshot, eyes and ears of what's on the ground there. What's going on?
So right now I am strolling through the paddock here in Baku, which is in the middle of town. It's kind of, the paddock itself is right in front of this huge, imposing government building, massive, really beautiful architecture, traditional Azerbaijani architecture building. But then at either end are just two Western hotels where half the teams stay. So you're kind of really like cooped in this paddock. And it's pretty warm. It felt very warm earlier today, actually. I was walking in about 10 a.m. before the F2 race, and it felt hot, and I thought they're going to really struggle today. But it does seem to have cooled off a little bit, which will be helping in terms of tyre management, because this race is taking place at the same time that FP1 and FP3 took place, but the teams didn't do any long running then. They didn't have time. So they haven't actually tested their tyres in long run conditions in these conditions. They did them in the evening when the sun was setting. It was a lot cooler. So there's some good unknowns there for strategy. But maybe the biggest challenge then is going to be the wind, because it is pretty breezy. We've had some really strong winds here. It's been taking things down. I'm doing trackside commentary for this race, and our commentary box rocks like anything in the wind. So it's been pretty blustery, and that can cause a few mistakes as well.
Why don't you tell our audience what that's all about, Chris? What do you mean you're doing trackside commentary? Is that written?
No, that's because you have all the fans in the grandstands here. You've got a view of a corner. Same with any racetrack, and any fan who's been to, say, COTA or Miami will have heard some of your guys' dulcet tones, I think, in COTA, don't they, sometimes? But it's for those in the grandstand to hear and to know what's going on, maybe where they can't see things, or just to get a bit more knowledge, bit of background. So myself and a local Azeri celebrity, basically, a very famous guy called Taral, stands next to me and basically translates what I say, and I just tell them what's likely to happen, maybe walking through the strategies.
Hey, you're a celebrity.
Explain what they can't see. Well, he is. He's the famous one.
I love it. That's a great job.
Chris, what direction is that wind coming from right now? So how's it going to affect the drivers? From behind, from the side, from the head? What?
Well, I'll admit what I've done is I've stupidly walked to the wrong end of the paddock, where I've got some well-sheltered flags that they're fluttering a bit. So it'll be a crosswind at turn 1. So basically it'll be a tailwind into turn 2 based on the flags that I've got here. So we could see a few going straight on at turn 2. If anything, I think they'd prefer that. That will make it maybe a bit tricky for the likes of Mercedes and some of the cars that are bouncing a lot as they come through the high speed turns 18 and 19. It's meant to be flat out and easy, but it's not in these cars. It's been pretty sketchy. No one's crashed through there, but you've seen a few fighting the wheel. So that's where it could unsettle them. But I think actually, if that direction stays true, and I'm not fully convinced it is just because of where I'm stood, it's quite sheltered, then that will probably be music to their ears, because it's not a tailwind into turn 1, for example, which is the biggest braking zone, or into turn 3, where a lot of people have gone straight on as well. And turn 1 has a big runoff area. So if you go straight on there, you don't lose too much time. You come back on probably 5 seconds, you have been lost. You go straight on at turn 3 or even turn 2, and you've got to do a 26-point turn to get yourself back out onto the circuit. And these cars don't like going into reverse. So you see drivers losing bucket loads of time when that happens.
Chris, I got a question for you about Mercedes. I know they're not the fulcrum of everything these days, but I'm kind of keeping a watchful eye because you did a great interview on the grid in Monaco, and then I heard Toto yesterday, just during qualifying on F1 TV, saying, we can't fight at the front. This is a development exercise. We're doing some experimental stuff. And I just thought that was the most audacious thing to say at this stage in the season, and it almost sounded ingenuine, just not genuine enough that he would say that. And could that really be the case that they're already looking to 23?
I think it's less that they're looking to 23. I think it's that they're saying that with this car, there's been no obvious easy fix. They haven't found anything that says, okay, just do that and we're on the right track. Barcelona gave them a hint at it, and that's why I think, when we spoke to him in Monaco, he was a little bit more positive. But then since the troubles they've had in Monaco and here, the issue here, George Russell was explaining, is they're not actually porpoising anymore. They're running the car a lot lower, but then that means the car is bottoming out a lot, and it's bottoming out so heavily that they're not, they're again losing performance that way. But that bottoming is coming from how low they're now able to run it, and the stiff suspension, just the ride of the car is not being good enough. So it's another problem that's surfaced for them to deal with that's giving similar results, but it's actually slightly different kind of cause. And because they keep thinking they've made progress and then they find, another issue pops up, I think they're kind of admitting, look, we've got to get pretty creative to see if there is a silver bullet, which is what Toto likes to say there isn't. But something that suddenly just gets the car into a position where this year is not a write-off. Because otherwise they could just end up like each weekend's going to be similar. If they're just trying to tweak things here and there, it's still fighting the same problems every week. They need to find something that removes those problems. So that's why they're having to get a bit experimental to see if that'll work.
Ever heard the expression whack-a-mole, Chris?
Yeah, that was the one I wanted. I was trying to get it in my head. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, good call.
Hey, we've got a clip from Lewis Hamilton that where he talks about this exactly. So let's hear from Lewis Hamilton.
Thank you. Yeah, when you're going through just the straight here. Yesterday it was just in a straight line. So as you come past the pit lane, it was on the deck, it was really painful, to the point that I couldn't finish my long run because my back was just killing me. I was like, okay, enough, enough is enough. And then today we've improved it at the end of the pit lane, but now it's bottoming a lot through the corners. That if you're going full gas through turn 19, the back end steps out. If you're going through 13, the car bottoms and backs. I know I was in the wall so many times, so it definitely is getting dangerous. And I don't know at what point we're going to fix this. But it's a fundamental issue, I think, also with because other people are having bottoming. So I think as a sport, we probably need to work towards making changes for the future.
How you feel about tomorrow's race? Damage limitation again?
I don't know if it's damage limitations. I mean, we're not even racing those guys at the front. They're in a completely different league. It's crazy how they change these rules to bring everyone closer together, but it's the same as it always has been, So it seems these guys are miles ahead. And then there's this pack that we're in. I don't think it's that damage limitation. I guess you could say that George is pole and I'm third, and that's the real race. So, thank you.
Wow, there's a lot to discuss about that.
Man, he was sitting on his mental couch, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, hey, we need to get a break in. Let's do that real quick, and then we will break that down and lots more after the break.
Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60. Our digital world is more than just interconnected, it's interdependent. And because of that, security is a top concern for every organization. The Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team knows they're a potential target for a host of digital attacks, which is why they leverage the CrowdStrike Falcon platform to deploy end-to-end security solutions. CrowdStrike revolutionized cybersecurity by harnessing the speed and power of the cloud to identify and stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. Our cloud-native Falcon platform protects and defends organizations against increasingly complex threats. So you can have the peace of mind to focus on your business momentum, not what's trying to stop it. That's protection that powers you. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. Jonathan, I want to talk about what Hamilton just said. There was too much there to ignore.
Yeah. I mean, I picked up on this yesterday. I mean, we all heard it. We were talking in our production meeting about his despondency almost throughout the weekend on the radio to Bono, and just sort of being just disconsolate about the whole thing. He mentioned the bottoming on the radio, but that interview there, I mean, we're not even fighting with the big guys anymore. I mean, it's almost complete defeat by him. And let's be honest, it's a position, and this is where you really see what a true champion looks like. I mean, he came in at the very top, you know, and he's been at the very top of Formula One pretty much since he arrived. This is probably the biggest uphill struggle he's had with a car since he's joined Formula One.
I feel like it's almost as if he's not even in a race, that he's more just at, Spanish testing, that he's just like collecting data.
And if his team boss is saying pretty much the same thing, I mean, the one sort of bit or area that they did say was we're looking forward to Austria and Silverstone, where there are flatter tracks that won't bottom out the car. But it's a fundamental issue, clearly.
Yeah, and some of the teams have figured it out. I mean, we were talking during the break, Les and I, and how Ferrari has. You definitely see it in the straights, but in the corners, they've got it figured out. And you rightly so, Les. You point out that that's mostly due to the lower airflow in the corners, but not every team has got it figured out to where it works like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance and a give and take. I mean, gas mileage for speed, one or the other, you won't get both. And so in this, we're looking at the handling of the car. How much air is coming under the front end that basically it gulps it as it passes through the car and gives it that bucking motion and the porpoise that we see there. So there's got to be a balance under that floor pan to make that work out. And like I said, obviously some have got that sorted.
I want to ask Chris Medland this question because we talked about this in our production call yesterday. But Chris, I brought up the topic of how this porpoising, I'm surprised, here we are in the 8th round, that we're still dealing with this to the degree that we are. And I just wonder, I mean, my first thought was at some point we need to get this, they need to get it figured out. It's not good for the sport. Would you agree with that?
I would a little, yeah, because I'm actually starting to side with the drivers slightly in terms of how uncomfortable it is for them. Like the pain it might be putting through their back, the difficulty in spotting a braking point. Now, I think as Bob said, you could just raise the ride height and then you have a smoother ride and you can see where you're going. And okay, you're giving up performance, but that's what you've got to do. And I think that is actually a fair argument based on, well, every team can do that. And it's up to them to choose how they want to run the car. And if it's really difficult for the driver to drive, then you're trusting the driver to get it right. But I think partly as well, we've got to remember Baku is a venue that was almost always going to be the worst venue for porpoising. We've got the longest full throttle section on the calendar. It's over 2 kilometers from when they come out of turn 16, but you've got some sweeping bends where you really don't want to be bouncing through that. And it is fairly smooth, but it is still a street circuit. So it's bumpy enough and that could trigger porpoising. So on a properly smooth, normal, permanent circuit, you get less of it. So I do think we're seeing it probably at its worst right now. And I would imagine teams will improve on it moving forward. But George Russell made a point you guys have just made. Ferrari have it too, but they seem to be able to handle it. Their drivers seem to be able to deal with it, and it's not costing them lap time. They're very quick with it, and the floors aren't breaking, which is also another point because Mercedes can't run it too low and have all that bottoming and break their floors every week. So that's the kind of trade-off they have as well. I think while the drivers now, there's been a lot of discussion this weekend about the drivers' own feelings towards this, trying to separate themselves from their teams and say, look, this is not nice for us. Can you do something about it moving forward so we don't have to sit and endure this? I think that needs to be listened to because there's some drivers that are saying that and their cars are quick. They know they've got performance. Everyone wants a quick car, but they need just a little bit more of a comfortable ride. So hopefully there's like a compromise found because I don't think it'll take a lot. You're talking about raising the ride height slightly, and it does really lessen the problem. We saw it in practice yesterday with the 2 Mercedes. Much less of a problem in FP3, but everyone's going that bit slower than they want to go in qualifying when it really shows up.
Jonathan,
I think it goes back to a fundamental issue that has maybe outlived its usefulness. I think the teams need some perhaps limited amount of on-track testing. Right now, they have to do all their testing on race weekends. Largely. And so it's difficult. They're kind of shooting in the dark when they get to a race weekend, trying to figure out what they need. I think a little testing would help a lot. And it might even help on the cost side in terms of, computer-aided design and wind tunnel and so on. I think just, let them get a couple of days a year out there and let them pound out some miles and find some solutions.
And Bob, wouldn't you agree with me that, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think what was interesting was that Formula One came out this week and kind of said to us, we did try and offer up a bit of a proposal to the team, just some changes or tweaks or ways we could maybe address it when they thought, based on simulations and development, that porpoising could become a thing. But the teams themselves, in pre-season, were saying that they hadn't expected it. They hadn't seen it coming. So it'll be interesting to find out the truth there, whether this wasn't a phenomenon that they knew they would all face and they only found out how bad it was when they went real-world testing, in which case Bob is completely spot on. Like, then they needed to run the cars. If it's one they didn't see coming, then I'd actually say that then comes down to the simulation tools need improving so that something like this would show up in advance, and then they can address it within their simulation tools and their off-track design. So it'll be interesting to try and find out where the truth lies in that.
I won't make any friends in the paddock, but what about a summer break testing session to give them a few developmental hours or maybe a little budget in the summer break to address it?
I think the mechanics would rise up against the machine.
Like I said, I won't make any friends there with that idea.
No.
But my point overall, though, was about to say the same thing. It's like the testing should surely be part of Formula One. I mean, I think let's say you're a new fan coming to the sport. It seems odd that this is the pinnacle of technology and Oracle and all these data companies are involved. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly, you can see the guy bouncing around and everything else is so finite and so brilliant and so specific that this is a fundamental issue within not just one car, but everything. And that's why I think, like you say, testing should be part of. I mean, NASA wouldn't just send up a rocket if it was, if it was swaying everywhere. They would test it. And I think, you've got to give that parallel a little bit. I think testing should be part of Formula One. It used to be. And I know that they did it to cost cut, but now probably back in Brackley, they're spending more money than they ever have done on trying to sort this problem out now.
Exactly. Exactly the point. Are you spending more to solve a problem you could have solved much more easily and cheaply if you'd had some testing time?
Well, that is true. Don't forget there's a cost cap. So whether you're spending the money on trying to solve a problem or on improving your car, you are actually now limited on how much you'll spend. So in a sense, yes, you can say it's wasted money, but it's the same money that's being spent. It's just where you're spending it. If this would come up a year or two ago, I totally agree that with unlimited spending, you'd have Mercedes spending $500 million trying to solve a problem like this. Now they're restrained by the same 140 million that everyone else is. So I think the money aspect maybe isn't quite as strong an argument as it used to be. But similarly, I am with you guys. This is meant to be the pinnacle of racing. And these guys don't get to drive their cars. Like, they don't get to practice aside from when they come to each event. They don't get to do training in between in their actual cars. And the teams don't get to either. They have to kind of guess and then find out on a Friday.
Jonathan, what are you looking at there?
I'm going to see if Chris's eyes are on this as well. There's a Ferrari, a number 16 Ferrari, being dragged from the back of the grid and being walked up. Johnny Herbert's approaching it, but I don't know where you are, Chris, but it just seems a bit odd to have the Ferrari stop there.
No, that should be totally normal. I'm near the middle, but all of the cars are being dragged. They get raised up on their jacks at the back of the grid. The mechanics put a trolley underneath their cars, turn them off, get the coolers onto them to get the brakes cool and the engine cool, and then they push the cars or drag them or pull them. However, like I'm seeing George Russell come by now, and the front two mechanics are pushing the front wheels, but they've got tire covers on and it's raised off the ground, and they push it through the middle of the grid because it's more secure and you're not going to break a front wing against somebody walking around.
Right.
But
they don't want you driving through the crowded grid.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's been some incidents in the past where it's been pretty sketchy. I mean, we're going back a while now, so it's been like this for a little while. But one thing I will say is, having got into the paddock and felt it being windy and not so warm earlier, now I've come out onto slightly more open space of the grid. It's actually not as windy as it has been. It's much calmer and cooler. Calmer and more still than it has been. And that's meant the heat is feeling like it's rising again. So I think we're probably swaying back more towards track temperatures and tire issues than wind-related offs.
Wow. All right, well, guys, let's get in a quick break here. And when we come back, we'll have more from Chris in Baku, and we'll continue to get ready for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix right after this.
Hi, I'm Jenny from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
The Speed City F1 pre-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. Don't forget that XM part. All right, gentlemen, we are now 25 minutes from the Formula One Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Getting excited. I don't know about you guys, but Bob, why don't you elevate our excitement by walking us through the grid here?
Well, I'll certainly give it a try. Okay, here we go. Starting from the pole for the 6th time this year, 4th straight time, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, but it's important to note that of those 3 previous poles, Ferrari has won none of those races. Mr. Leclerc has to be getting a little frustrated. To the outside is the man of the weekend and the previous weekend, Sergio Perez of Red Bull, who's been on a roll, as we mentioned earlier, defending race winner, won in Monaco 2 weeks ago. He's got a new contract. He's beating his teammate Max Verstappen consistently, session to session. On row 2, inside the aforementioned Max Verstappen, same position he started from last year, but he's being completely outshone lately by Sergio Perez, and he's never won here in Baku. Next to him will be Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, who's sort of the guy who's walking around with a dark cloud over his head. He had provisional pole till the very final runs of Q3 and then lost out yet again. Back to row 3, George Russell, sort of the opposite of the Ferrari situation. This is only the 2nd top 5 start for Russell this year in the Mercedes, but he has finished every race in the top 5, which is a pretty big achievement when you consider the state of the Mercedes team. Next to him on row 3, Pierre Gasly, equaling his best start of the year. This is where Sergio Perez started the race last year when he won. On row 4 inside, Lewis Hamilton, out-qualified by Russell for the 3rd straight race at Mercedes. Next to him, young Yuki Tsunoda, his best qualifying position of the year for AlphaTauri. Row 5, the 2 fastest cars in a straight line this weekend. Sebastian Vettel inside for Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso outside for Alpine, 2 and 1 in the speed trap, both of them over 201 miles per hour. Row 6, all McLaren as they continue to scratch their heads in the papaya cars. Lando Norris inside, Daniel Ricciardo outside. Conversely to the cars just ahead of them on the grid, these are the 2 slowest cars in the speed trap. Neither McLaren has been in Q3 since round 2 at the beginning of the year.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Bob, but I'm just going to grab Dr. Helmut Marko, Red Bull advisor here. We're looking at Sergio Perez's car, Max Verstappen's car right behind him. 2nd and 3rd, there's a Ferrari ahead of you. How do you play it today?
We must find the right moment for a pit stop, either overcut, undercut, and then we have to see to go a real good speed without ruining the tires. That's because the asphalt temperature is now 50 degrees, so the tire situation could be critical.
Yeah, it is going to be tricky. One thing we keep talking up about being tricky is having Sergio in front of Max, but you must be loving this problem, having 2 such strong drivers right now.
Yes, the first time we have a driver who is on the level of Max. It's good for the Constructors' Championship, but also generally it motivates both drivers, and we are really happy that Sergio improved so dramatically from last year.
Yeah, he's been very, very impressive, but we can't ignore the fact Charles Leclerc on pole again. The Ferrari is quick. How long are you going to be able to let these 2 fight it out, or are you going to have to back, realistically, Max early on?
It's only the 8th race, and you have to consider Max has 4 wins and 2 technical problems. Sergio only 1. That's why the difference is relatively, 15 points or so. It's too early for any strategic decisions, I would say.
So yeah, you just let them race as they are for now?
As long as they don't hinder each other, in the end, they have to work for the team.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing how they do. Helmut, thank you very much for your time. Dr. Helmut, Marko there. Sorry, Bob, I'll let you carry on with the grid.
Quite all right. Always ready to hear from one of the most influential men in Formula One. We'll pick up with row 7. To the inside, Esteban Ocon, who went out in Q2 once again, in contrast to his teammate Fernando Alonso, went to Q3. In fact, Ocon has only reached Q3 3 times this season. Next to him, Guan Yu Zhou, who outqualified his more heralded teammate, Bottas, for the first time in his rookie season. On row 8, Valtteri Bottas is on the inside. As in Monaco, he managed to keep his streak alive of getting out of Q1, but only by 1 spot. Next to him, Kevin Magnussen. It's the first time this year that neither Haas has made Q2 in qualifying. Row 9 is all Williams Mercedes. Alex Albon to the inside, more than 0.6 of a second quicker than his teammate Nicholas Latifi, outqualified by Albon 8-0 this year, and the rumors are beginning to start that he may lose his seat next year. And on the final row, Lance Stroll, who crashed in Q1 for the second straight year here in Baku. Next to him, Mick Schumacher in the Haas, his first Q1 exit and slowest on the timesheets for the first time in his career. Sorry, guys, I'm still short on coffee this morning, but there you have the grid. Leclerc at the front, Schumacher at the back.
Hey, guys, I want to talk. Let's go back to Helmut Marko, because this is a really interesting discussion, because Chris just flat out asked him about
team orders.
Are we doing team orders or not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the really
bottom line. Yes, they will.
Yeah,
they will. They will. But, we were talking yesterday about team orders and things. I think if I'm a driver, knowing what I've seen up until this point, my new contract's going to say, hey, look, if you pull team orders and push me back, I get at least the money to finish that 1 spot earlier, or whatever the case was. I get a couple $100,000 euro as a consolation prize for taking team orders.
I'll tell you someone who hopefully won't be using team orders today. That's Andreas Seidl, because he's got his 2 McLaren drivers lining up together just outside the top 10. Andreas, what do you think you can do from here today?
I expect a difficult race, if it's a normal race, because we have this lack of top speed here on the long straight, which will make it difficult to move forward. At the same time, it's a street race. I think our car is dealing well with tire degradation as well. Maybe that's an advantage in that heat. So the goal is clear. We want to get back into the points, and that's what we will try.
Yeah, Lando looked like he could have been in Q3 yesterday. Daniel, I think, qualified about where he's looked all weekend. Who do you think are your main targets? Are we just looking at the Alpines and Sebastian Vettel there, or even Pierre Gasly up in 6th? Is he within range?
Yeah, it's difficult to predict. We have seen several times this year that cars qualify well, for example, and then have huge issues in the race with tire degradation and fall back quickly. That's obviously what we hope for, and hopefully we don't suffer the same issue. But I think that's a bit the picture we have seen so far this year. It's quite up and down with different cars, so we need to see. We only have limited information also now in these conditions, what the tires will do. So main thing is to focus on ourselves, make sure we do the best possible race, and hopefully it's enough to get by down there, one or the other car in front of us.
Yeah, we'll see if you pull that off. Just finally, a wider question. We've been discussing the bouncing, the porpoising. The drivers seem to be getting a bit fed up with it and wanting to talk to the FIA. Where do you stand? Is this an issue that can be changed and addressed?
Well, it's quite easy to address. Just run the car higher or put some downforce over. But I think it's a point we need to take serious, coming from the drivers. That's why it makes sense to discuss that in the next technical advisory committee as well. So I'm not saying we should not look into it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and good luck today, Andreas. Thank you very much.
There you go, Les.
There you go.
Raise the car up.
There you go.
Exactly what you were saying.
Otmar Seidl came from Porsche. The solution to Porsche was always more power.
What was that, Chris?
I said we had the solution, didn't we, already? But I'm going to annoy another man right in front of me now, Otmar Szafnauer, who's just checking his radio, and I think everything's going okay. Otmar, you've got Fernando just in the top 10. Esteban, maybe surprisingly just outside, given his form this year. How do you feel yesterday went for you?
Well, not quite what we anticipated. Lando purposely ran off track to cause a yellow flag, which meant Esteban was caught out. He couldn't get his quick lap in. So it's unfortunate. We should have had him out in front of Lando, so he couldn't do those shenanigans, but we got caught out.
One thing you do have, and apologies to the people of Azerbaijan because the anthem's on right now, but one thing you do have is high top speed. Do you think you can go forward in this race with that? Is that a good strength for you?
It definitely is around here. So there's overtaking opportunities. I think we'll have the speed to do it. So let's see what happens.
Good luck. Thank you, Otmar.
Nice.
That's going to be fun watching Lando Norris trying to deal with world champions in front of him in Alonso and Vettel. That should be good fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And Hamilton, for that matter.
Yeah, don't forget.
Can I give Chris a shout out? I go by Chris Medland's F1.com strategy guide. So once they finish the anthem, why don't we get to the man himself and let us know the strategy. We've heard tires mentioned a couple of times there. Obviously, that comes into your strategy, but I'd like to hear what Chris has got to say about that in terms of what the potential strategies are.
Hey, Chris, are you there?
I am indeed. Sorry about that. I was just waiting for the anthem to finish.
Okay.
But I'm actually making my way quickly to the front of the grid now you mentioned strategy, because Mario Isola should be up there and can also talk to us about it. I just dance through all the teams who line up for the anthem and stand and face the front of the grid.
While we're talking about tires and the anthem is playing, our apologies to listeners. We try to avoid that, but sometimes it's not possible. But keep in mind, in 5 previous runnings of this race, twice the leader has had tire punctures or tire failures within sight of the checkered flag. 3 laps for Valtteri Bottas back in 2019, I believe.
Yeah.
And 6
well, good timing to talk about those, because I've got Mario Isola right here with me. Sorry, Mario, we talked tires last night. Who do you think is going to start on which tyre? We're going to see a few soft compound tyres at the start, or do you think it'll be mainly mediums?
I believe mainly mediums. Also, if in the past we had some surprises at other races, but today we have 55 degrees of track temperature. With this sun, is probably lasting for quite a good amount of time during the race. So the soft has to be managed too much in this condition. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe this.
But do you still think a one-stop's going to be the way to go, medium hard, or do you think with this heat we could see a few more two-stoppers? Because you could even go medium hard soft, couldn't you?
That's an option. On the Weber is lower, but medium hard is still possible one stop with a bit of management on the medium. The hard is okay. The hard, we don't have a lot of data because they didn't use it too much on Friday or Saturday. But from the indication, they can push on the hard. Interesting that other than Ferrari, McLaren, and Alfa Tauri, all the other teams decided to keep 2 sets of hard available in the allocation. That is an indication that maybe in case of safety car, they have also an extra set of hard available.
Yeah, that's a very good point Mario Isola makes. I'll let him get off the grid. We're getting shutted off here. But yeah, safety cars, I mean, they're almost certain to happen around here. We get so many. We've had 2 Formula 2 races this weekend already, and both of them have seen multiple safety car periods. Although it did end very well, I will say, for an American today. Logan Sargent finished 2nd in the feature race in Formula 2. Nice. Great job from him. But yeah, that was a race that saw, I think, 3 safety car interruptions. So I think we can guarantee one in this Grand Prix.
Good point. Yeah, almost guaranteed. And you're right. And then all the tire strategies, everything out the window for sure. But guys, let's get in our last little break here. And when we come back, we'll have more with Chris in Azerbaijan, and we'll finish breaking down the race for you.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
All right. Hey, Chris, you talked about the potential for red flags, but this has been one of my favorite things this weekend. How many times have we seen drivers kiss the wall, come so close to the wall, they're kicking up dust, and you can't even tell if it's the paint, the dust, the wall? That has been one of my favorite things of this weekend, and I look forward to lots more of that too.
Yeah, I mean, it tends to happen a lot when the drivers are on a qualifying lap and they're trying to go flat out. But also when they're now in a race situation, if they start trying to change their line slightly and get in someone's mirrors, you do see it happen then as well. And we saw it in some of the support races in Formula 2, but even Alex Albon in practice was just not really paying enough attention. He clipped the wall at turn 17 on the inside and ended his practice session early. And it was just a silly mistake to make. But you've got big, wide cars with realistically poor visibility on a track that is just it's so tight in the sense of, I mean, the castle section is ridiculously tight, but it's so tight in the sense that it's just concrete barriers pretty much everywhere. And you're looking to carry a lot of high speed. It's not all slow speed technical stuff. There's plenty of bits where you're trying to make sure the car's flowing and you're scrubbing as little off as you can. And that means that sometimes they just get it slightly wrong, and yet little kiss that can cause issues. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see this first lap. Turns 1, 2, and 3 tend to get really, really bunched up. We've seen lots of incidents in Formula 2 there. There's going to be some broken front wings somewhere. It gets very, very tight. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Also, something we briefly mentioned off the back of that chat with Mario Isola, when we're talking about strategy, I reckon we might see 1 or 2 cars gamble on softs at the start, for the reason that you get a better launch off the line, you get better traction out of turn 2, so you've got a chance of making moves. But also, if there's going to be an incident, you're going to have a restart. So you want the softer compound tyre to help your restart. You're also then going to have laps behind a safety car or at slower speed where you can manage the tyre and extend the stint. So I think there's going to be a few that might just consider it. And it'll only really backfire on them if we have a really clean first half of the race.
Well, somebody just commented on social media and said, Toto Wolff just said in a live interview that Hamilton's car is so bad he may not be able to finish the race due to physical limitations. Wow.
Wow, I've not heard that said from Toto. I know Lewis, we heard from him earlier, didn't we? He's not happy with it. But one thing Toto did say yesterday was that they were running experiments on both cars that were different, and the ones on Lewis's car hadn't worked. So then they were on the back foot with him, and that's one of the reasons why he says there's this gap between the two drivers. Now, he might be just trying to talk up his most successful star driver and make sure that his motivation stays high. But at the same time, he is the experienced guy you're going to run those experiments with. So I think Lewis does have a car that he's far less happy with than George has. But even the gap to pole for George is like, 1.3 seconds, something like that. So big gaps. I don't expect to see Mercedes fighting with the top 2. Certainly not.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan, another comment on social media said cars bouncing so bad it's compressing his spine so bad it's uncomfortable. I mean, we've heard George complain about that, but we've had other drivers talking about it. But yeah, any thoughts about that?
I mean, I'm starting to veer towards what Chris was saying, that we do really need to discuss this as a whole, as a sport, because physically this is not what you pay for. This is not what you tune in to hear that the greatest driver of all time potentially maybe not being able to finish the race. Now, is that just talk, or is that actually genuinely a possibility? And if it is a possibility, then something's got to change drastically.
Yeah, we've got to remember that we've seen them in practice, we've seen them in qualifying when they have had this issue, but they're always shorter runs. They get a break, they come in the pits. The longest session is 1 hour long. Or if it's longer than that, it's because of delays. But this race is going to be close to 2 hours. They don't get that break unless there's a red flag. They're going to be constantly being battered in these cars for 51 laps. And yeah, they're going to really, really feel it. So I think that's probably because of the unknown of how bad it will get over that time. That might be why Toto said it. But yeah, it's not the sort of thing we ideally want to be talking about this close to a race, is it? So hopefully that's something that can be improved soon.
It's really interesting that Toto would say something like that, even assuming it's true, which I guess we have to do. I thought immediately that he might be trying to give his star driver sort of a soft landing, an excuse to get out of the car, if you will. I can't imagine Lewis is going to do that, but if he really is in pain and his ability to race in Canada next week is at stake, yeah, we may see it, which would be really sad.
Hey guys, I thought about something as I was going to bed early last night, and I said it's about time for us to start thinking about giving away some tickets to the United States Grand Prix here in Austin. And I was thinking about how we could do that, and I think we'll try to do the first giveaway, our first pair in the post-race show. And I want to look for some good really good takes on what they saw during the race, tagging us in social media. We'll start with that. Or they can always call the show, of course, which is 512-643-5483. But I want to do that during the post-race show. Remember, we're going to have a full hour of post-race show. We got about 3.5 minutes left in this show. In a few minutes, I want you guys to put your thinking caps on because I have a really interesting take on my prediction. I'm really excited to talk about that. So y'all be thinking about that. But Bob's grinning ear to ear. And Bob, by the way, had a nice comment on social media. Deepak said, "Thank you, Bob, for being there. I just wanted to watch you after the trio. Habo, Match, and you have been silent on F1. Thanks, Bob." Well, Bob's been on here on Speed City for a couple of years now, so you can come see Bob anytime you want. But hey, Chris, give us a last second eyes and ears on the ground in Baku. We may have lost Chris here, but he's gone. Actually, the producer just said he is disconnected.
Well, they'll have just probably shuffled him off the grid. He's got to get to his commentary position. Remember?
That's true. That's true. He probably has to do that.
Bye.
Yeah.
Great insight though to have him right there talking to all the right guys.
Oh yeah. Let's see. There's something in the chat. Oh, Sky S1 just tweeted out. The quote says, "Oh, it's from Toto. It says, I'm not even sure we can go full length with Lewis. Physical pain caused by the porpoising." Wow, that's a credible source there, I would say.
Rise up the car, as Les quite rightly pointed out at the beginning of the show.
Yeah. Grab a socket wrench, go out there and raise the car.
So what do these engineers get paid?
I don't know. I tell you, start applying.
Add the seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, pad the seat.
Yeah, just grab a cushion, throw it underneath it.
Throw his salary under him.
Gum shield in.
Oh, yeah, that has been a crazy discussion. Well, gentlemen, we are 2 minutes left, so let's go to our predictions. You know what? I'll start with mine. I never do that. I always go last. So my prediction is that at the end of the race, it's going to be Checo leading the race with Max right behind him, and we get team orders. That's my prediction. And as far as the podium, the finish out that podium, I would say that it would be Charles Leclerc. So very safe prediction, but I want to see that prediction of team orders just to see the whole world explode around us. What about you, Jonathan?
All right, Perez for the win, Verstappen second, Russell third.
Okay.
You are almost right.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to go with Max, Perez, and Russell.
All right.
I like that. Bob?
I think Checo wins the race with Max second and Leclerc third. I'll go with Jonathan, or with you, John.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, what do y'all think about my team orders prediction?
I agree. I think Marko was in line.
Okay. I just want it because I want the world to come. the controversy.
You want heads to explode.
I want heads to explode.
I want Checo to get more points than Verstappen and make it less than 10. So then we've really got a championship on our hands, and they have the problem that everybody loves, which is, what do we do now?
Yeah. What do we do with these two drivers?
Yeah. Who's number one?
Yeah.
But it's one of those seasons. It's not like you're just fighting Mercedes as a team, Red Bull. You're fighting two or three others.
All right, guys, we are at time, but don't forget, we do have our 1 hour post-race show right after the race. And write the phone number down. Give us a call. It's 512-643-5483. We'd love to hear from you during the post-race show. And don't forget, we're going to give away a pair of USGP tickets. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you after the race.